The Transource Power Line, often called the IEC, Independence Energy Connection, was proposed by Transource in the middle of last year. And what they were doing was they were responding to a call from the grid operator, who is PJM. What they proposed to do is simply to create a pair of new power lines that would move energy from Pennsylvania to the Washington, D.C. market. The IEC project is being proposed by PJM in order to lower the cost of electricity in the Washington, D.C. market. There has been no evidence or even an assertion by PJM that the project's needed in order for reliability reasons. Instead, it's only been proposed as a market efficiency project to lower the cost of electricity there. A market efficiency project is a project whereby they propose to move electricity from a low-cost producer to a place of high demand. The idea is that they can move electricity from one place to another and lower the price in the destination. And the way that they lower the price in the destination is that they don't need to call upon higher priced producers or higher priced generation in that destination market. Many of these periods of high cost occur at periods of high demand. And so those would be producers that could respond quickly to demand. So many of those kinds of places in Maryland might be coal plants. In summary, what they plan to do is move cheap electricity powered by natural gas in Pennsylvania to the DC market, where there is not as much of that as available. The analysis shows that things have changed quite a lot since the project was first dreamt up by PJM in 2014. Back then, they saw what they thought was a high amount of congestion in the Washington, D.C. market, over $1 billion worth of cost there. Since then, congestion has collapsed in that market by some 95%, and there's no longer quite the need for congestion there. The latest numbers from PJM are that the project should be able to save $707 million in the Washington, D.C. market over a 15-year period. What they don't publicize, but has been well documented in the discovery that's currently going on, is that there would be a $690 million rate increase in areas outside of the DC market. And this makes sense if you just think for a moment about the fact that they're taking electricity from one place and moving it to another. They're taking the lowest cost electricity in this market and they're moving it to DC. When you take power out of this market and the demand stays the same and the supply has decreased, guess what? The prices are going to increase for us in Pennsylvania and in several states around here, and prices might decrease there. But the net effect of it is there's only $17 million worth of savings over 15 years. So by the time you throw in a $500 million cost to build this project, you're looking at 3 cents of congestion savings for every dollar we spend on the project. It makes no sense at all. The Office of Consumer Advocate in Pennsylvania has looked at this very carefully, and they've proposed several other alternatives. One is if you assume that the project needed to be built because there was demand in Washington, D.C. market, which I would say that there is not a need for it anymore, but if there were, there are two parallel lines that run parallel to the IEC East, the portion that would go through York and Harford County. There's a line just to the west and a line just to the east. They both go from basically the same proposed substation into Maryland. One goes exactly to the same place the IEC East would go. Both of those lines are newly refurbished within the last 5 years to the same voltage and the same kind of monopoles as the IEC East, and both of those lines are completely bare on one side. So my thinking and the OCA's thinking is that half of a line to the west and half of a line to the east equals one new full line, no new greenfield project necessary. A greenfield project would plow up new ground for the poles, for the wires, ground that would be in current use as agricultural or community. A brownfield project would instead use existing poles, existing architecture that's there for the power industry as it is now. It would have been the obvious choice 10, 20 years ago. What's happened since then is that there's been a privatization that PJM is helping to move along. And the idea behind privatization is that multiple entities can bid on these projects. So in this case, what happened was Transource bid on the project, but they don't own any of the existing utility architecture here. They won the bid, but because they don't own any of the existing architecture, they would have to pay or have to negotiate with the current owners of that utility. And there's nothing that forces them to do that, and there's nothing that forces PJM to consider doing that. So here we are with a proposed greenfield project when there's current capacity on existing lines. The biggest policy flaw I see is PJM's assumption that the people in the Northern Virginia and DC market are entitled to the same price of electricity as those of us in this market. After all, here in York County, we have at least a half dozen generators, probably more like 8 or 10, in our backyard. We're the ones who live with all of these high voltage transmission lines, the pollution, all of the other things that go with having this kind of capacity in our backyard. We're the ones who helped pay for the dam years ago, and we helped capitalize all of those things that have been built. I see no reason why electricity shouldn't cost less here in this market than it does in a market that has almost no generators at all. Everything else in the economy has that kind of supply and demand without some kind of interference from an outside entity trying to level the prices. Absolutely. See those trees down there? Mm-hmm. The first towers would be right there, and they'd run along the ridge. My name is Baron Shaw. I am the ninth? I don't know. It's hard to count that many generations here on this farm. Our family began this place in the 1830s. My family built our house during the Civil War, and I am the fourth generation to run this place as a commercial fruit operation. I moved back here about 5 years ago to be a part of this legacy. Well, it's been a huge distraction for me, first of all. And it hasn't just been this growing season. This actually started during peach season last year in 2017. So we've been at this now for 14, 15 months, something like that. So it took up the greater part of my winter, thinking through all of the things that we needed to do to try to resist this and educate the public and educate our elected officials. And this year I've invested a lot of time as well, and it's been a huge distraction for me. It takes up most of my Sundays, which is pretty much the only day off I have. For sure, and that's one of the reasons that the idea of a power line here bothers me so much. We've made great strides in the last decade here to bring on a retail operation and a pick-your-own operation, and it's not unusual for us to have hundreds or thousands of people out here on a weekend. And the line would be clearly visible from this pick-your-own section of my farm. It would run just on the other side of that ridge there, but they're 130-foot towers, so the line would be clearly visible from here. Well, this row is used for school tours in the fall. So it's early October now, and every day during the week we'll have a lot of school kids come in, preschool, and these kids want to know where their food comes from and learn a little bit about what it's like to be in the country. And so we give them a little bit of that every year, and what they would be able to see from this row where they pick their apples is the new high voltage line carrying electricity to Washington, D.C. That's not why people come to the country. They don't really want to see that kind of thing here. They come for the pristine view the way that it is. Looking in that direction, you can see almost no signs of human civilization right now, and I'd like to keep it that way.